Hi everyone, welcome to another Lead Squared panel discussion. I am Karthika from Lead Squared's marketing team and I will be your host for the day. Today we have a very exciting panel here and we are going to discuss how you can ace omni-channel marketing to drive enrollments in the year 2023. We have a lot of views to cover today, and I know that everyone here is super excited. But before that, let me quickly introduce our wonderful panel. We have Miss Grace Davis, who is the CEO of Education PH. Hi, Grace. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we also have Mr. David Rosengrave, who is the Regional Education Lead at AWS. Hi, David. We also have Mr. Branson Lee, who is the head of academy at Tuxford. Hi, Branson. Thank you for joining us. And last but not the least, from Lead Squared, we have our regional business head, Mr. Abhishek Anand. And yes,
Yeah, hello guys.
unfortunately, two of our speakers couldn't make it. They had an emergency, but we have so much to cover today. So I'm really, really excited and I'm looking forward to learning from all of these wonderful speakers. But before we get to that, I'm just going to quickly give a few pointers to our audience. So if you have any questions during this whole roundtable, please do put it up on the questions tab. Our expert will take them up towards the end of the session. And if we will be putting up a couple of polls during the roundtable, so please do respond to them. We would love to hear from you. And of course, the chat box is always open. So if you want to engage with any of us, please put up your messages over there. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to hand the session over to Abhishek. Please take it forward.
Thank you so much, Karthika. Thank you. Wonderful. So, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining this roundtable. We are so excited to have all of you today here. And thank you so much to our speakers, David, Grace, and Branson. Thank you so much for giving your time. Yes, unfortunately, a couple of the speakers could not join due to their personal emergencies, but we still have a very good panel today. And I'm sure this is going to be very exciting for the audience. Yeah, so I think let's get this started. And the topic itself is quite interesting, and it's also the need of the hour. I feel all of us in education or in any industry, we need to ace the omni-channel marketing, and that is the only thing which is going to drive the enrollment for the businesses. And for me, enrollment is the heart and soul for any education business, right? That is where businesses generate their revenue. And in the today's world, I feel this industry, the education technology per se, just half a decade ago this industry was less than $10 billion globally, right? And today, it's more than $300 billion of industry, which has grown almost 30x in last 5 years. Somehow I feel the growth of industry itself is the biggest threat to the most of the companies, because when your industry is growing at such a rapid pace, right, you have to cope up with the expectations of the business plus the audience you are catering to, and you have to adapt and adopt very quickly as per the growth, right? And another challenge, and the biggest challenge is for the businesses out there in education and education technology, that because of this growing trend, there has been so many similar kind of businesses out there, right? So people who are into K-12 or certifications or higher education, or training or something like that, right? So the biggest need of this hour is to differentiate yourself, right? How do you differentiate yourself? And how do you make sure that in this cluttered space and ever growing space, you are able to build a strong business, and you are able to deliver the right value to your audience? And the role of the technology and the role of the personalization is super important, because the attention span of the audience is very low, especially in the B2C side of the education businesses. And how do you engage them with the right content at the right time is going to be very important. So this is what I feel. And today we have some experts on the panel, and all of them have done some extremely good work in the education as an industry, right? I'm going to start with the founder and CEO of Education Philippines. Miss Grace is here. And that's so nice of her that she was able to give time to us. Grace, welcome to the panel today, and we are delighted to have you. You have built an amazing business in edtech, industry, and serving the underserved Philippines market is something which is amazing, which you and education team is doing, right? When I look at your business personally, I'm sure a lot of audience here will be able to connect what I'm going to ask you as the first question. So you are delivering courses to the K-12 segment primarily, right? And the people who are going to consume your content is mostly the kids and the students, right, who are between K1 to 12, right? And but the irony is the decisions are usually taken by the parents for them, but it has to be a sale to both the end consumer and the parent. So how do you manage that, because I remember when I was a kid, if I like something and my parents are not on board with me, it's a very difficult situation, right? So as a team, how do you manage your different stakeholders, and what are some of the strategies, and what are some of the channels you have used to grow your business and reach out to your audience, Grace? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Abhishek. So, let me share our learnings and what we've been practicing exactly on how you've structured the question. So, first, understanding our audience. Definitely, the end user are the students who are actually not yet adults. So, majority here in the Philippines, we are speaking to K to 12 students, and then
Correct.
we know even if they're the ones using it, the one who has the purchasing power and who makes the final decision are not really the students. They are the
Exactly.
parents. When education started, we wanted to make sure that we are able to bring the change in the education system, wherein students and the youth don't want to feel like everything is being dictated upon them. So we started wherein we want to present education, speak to the youth, to the students directly, and even gensify our messages so that the students themselves will be ready to listen and have also the appreciation on the message that they're receiving. We were effective in doing that. So they were like reading more content about education because again, we have gensified the way of speaking to them. So education in a way started looking sexy in the eyes of our students. But
Amazing.
we are also a business enterprise, just like any of our attendees right now. I'm seeing a lot of different school names, which is great. Definitely, we want to serve the education products to our students, but there's also an equal business goal wherein there should be transactions happening. The students were not able to do that. It was the
Correct.
parents. So part of our learning journey was like we should not be creating campaigns and communication materials just on one set of audience who are the students. Important that we speak to them, but equally important that we develop a full marketing campaign that's also speaking to the parents. The appreciation of the parents of what education and our edge tutor could bring has a different set of benefits and needs versus that of the student. So for us, marketeers or like school and business entities, it means that we should be on on having a communication material that is relevant to students and another set of communication material that's relevant to the parent. So two different messages. So I'm speaking of two different message to two different audience. Knowing that those are like the variables you're going to manage, how are you going to implement it? And this is where I would say omni-channel will come in. The omni-channel in terms of specifying what are those channels for your parent and for your student, you might end up seeing almost the same channel names. But in terms of execution, you will filter again on what's the most relevant for a student versus a parent. So definitely, like we have a separate attack or like planning also on doing omni-channel depending on who our audience is. That's how we've been actually structuring the work that we
Mhm.
do in education. There's a bit of complexity because again, there are two separate audiences that we need to speak to for one same product, one same transaction that we want to.
Exactly. Which is very good. You have understood the science behind it, and you are trying to crack it, and that's why you're building such a solid business in Philippines. But to be very specific, what are some of the channels which worked for you to reach out to the Gen Z, in specific, because I think a lot of people in the audience here, they are part of the companies who are targeting this audience, right? So I'm sure it varies country by country as well, right? But in today's era, especially, what channels do you think are working for you? I would say Gen Z versus the parents, and yeah, and how are you planning to integrate the whole thing? Basically, that's very important. Yeah.
Okay, let me share what are the similar channels between the student audience and the parent audience. Definitely social media. So social media will be part of your listing of channels. Now it would just be a different type of social media already once you put on the age group. So we all know TikTok is the most loved social media channel for the students. Then for the parents, it's actually Facebook, right? So that
Oh,
has been like the strongest channel for us on both of those audience. So again, those are like the similar items in terms of like social media. Another similar item, messaging apps. So at first, I thought it was just like me being like a person doing work. Messaging apps is for coordinating work. But you know what? What we found out, it's not just parents who are actually in messaging apps because they also work and they also have like their community of friends and family. Our young ones are also in the messaging apps. So being present on those messaging apps is not just about like you doing your social listening, but also your opportunity to share some messages or thoughts or suggestions to your student audience and also to your parent audience. One last channel I want to mention wherein we see it not to be similar, email marketing. All of us on a daily basis is receiving a newsletter. But one of
yeah.
our biggest findings, parents will be open to receiving a newsletter. For the students, they even hardly open their email accounts. So like for us, getting to that realization, I often told my team already, I want to stop FOMO when it comes to student marketing initiative. Because everyone else is doing email marketing, it doesn't have to follow that education and with our edge tutor should be doing email marketing to students also. Because what we've learned, they don't even open their email accounts on a regular basis. So automatically we know that's not the most effective channel when we
Correct.
speak to student audience.
No, no, for sure, for sure. Uh, in our last webinar also, we asked this question, that how many channels, people are using to market their courses, to reach out to their audience. And, we were surprised to know that, 55% of the people said that, they're only using 2 to 3 channels to market their courses, right? It's okay to use 2, 3 channels, until and unless you know that it's going to work out for you, and you have a specific and precise approach for it, right? And it can vary from your industry to which part of education business you are into, what is your target audience. But my question to you will be, how can you help the audience here and tell them with your experience how they can integrate all these channels and leverage some technology to make sure that they have the best engagement? Because I can understand what channels you are using, Grace, but how do you integrate it? Because maybe, okay, your team might be talking to the child through messaging chats and all, and parents might be on email or on Facebook, right? But how do you how do you ensure it is integrated? Because it's all high velocity business, right? So many inquiries are coming in, you are talking to so many people. How do you map all that data and which works out in your favor? So can you help the audience with some of the strategies to do that? Yeah.
I mean, definitely with the volume of like number of channels that you need to manage, and then multiply that with your audience, right? Then definitely that's the number of queries that we should be responding to. If it's not a query, even just like a simple engagement to whatever message that we've communicated. Uh, First, knowing where do you want to collect all those information, that's the very first step. And finding out which platform could you be receiving that. That's for me, that's going to be the most efficient way of doing that, because what you want to do is like after doing all those marketing execution, you want to make sure that you are ready to respond to all the queries, to all the feedback, what you call this, that the audience will be giving. So having a platform to consolidate all of those would be the best one. And then, of course, you by the time you see those feedback, you will already be seeing a common theme. So
Understood.
apart from having those common theme, is my team ready to give a response to every certain theme or topic? It doesn't have to be like an exactly customized response to every query that we're going to give. Um, so it's really finding out what are those common questions, common themes, and then having a ready response to give, so that we will be able to have a quick, timely response to every stimuli or feedback that we're getting from all those marketing work.
Got it, got it. I think that's wonderful. I think let's take Branson's feedback on that, Branson's point of view, because, he comes from a different part of the world. And for our audience, Branson is based out of Singapore, and he's managing the business for so, it's more into the B2B side, right? And so, Branson, I'm sure you don't face all this problem because for Grace, it's primarily a B2C business, but for you, so it's very good to have both of you together here, first of all. And you can also tell audience, because for the audience, let me tell, Branson is doing a B2B business primarily, and they partner with the corporates, right? And they partner with them to generate some of the best certifications, which they deliver to increase the employability of their employees. And they also somewhere deal with the individuals as well. So, Branson, what is your take on this? Because I'm sure some of the audience is from the B2B side of the business as well. What is your take on this whole omni-channel effort? And do you also face similar challenges? How do you reach out to your audience, because your audience are majorly corporate and stuff like that, right? So, can you also share your point of view on this?
All right. So thank you very much for having me here today. In this entire environment, it's very different from where Grace is seeing. Like what you have mentioned, B2C and B2B is a very, very different engagement channel. So for Grace side, is we're talking about they are not opening their emails often. For our side, email marketing is actually one of the top tier forms of engagement. All right. So in sense of when we send an email, there must be a certain intent in terms of how the email flow is. Typically, like a sales funnel, from awareness to consideration to decision making and so on and so forth. So, how does it actually help, or how does it actually value add in the person's state of mind from a corporate business perspective? So, from a corporate business perspective, they could be saying that, am I doing a proactive approach to have consistent training for my members, of my teammates, or am I taking a reactive approach when things happen, I require training? Okay, but there is a portion of what about if it's talent retention? I'm trying to retain talent. How do I retain talent? By upskilling them. So the each of the every message is very different in terms of email marketing. So from the prospecting, how we said, is very, very specific. However, it needs to be an omni-channel environment. It cannot be just email marketing itself. Social media is a definitely must to reinforce the importance of engagement. How we do that is usually through email marketing. We'll push them to a web page, all right, a landing page, not a web page, but a landing page, which will be pixeled towards Meta platform. Yeah. So we reinforce in terms of if they log in using their personal email or email that's registered to the social media platforms, they are able to engage. However, do take caution note that it is very expensive. All right. I've seen a significant increase in terms of the how much we are paying year on year back in, like, let's say 2019, 2020 to date. All right. I'm looking at least 100% increase in price. All right, for the same target audience. All right, who are
Okay.
reading this. So this is something to take in consideration of a cost control, a cost management. So like what I cover is email marketing, social media, and also landing pages. But with all this itself, we need to complement with a more in-person touch engagement, webinars, like such. So although we have always been selling this, it's sometimes they just need some reaffirmation or conformity of what they have in mind really. And through such webinar engagement, they will say that, okay, it really helps me to have clarity on what I want and what am I going to bring this forward. All right. But for corporate engagement for omnichannel, there's also referral codes. So what we have known is like we kind of like stole ideas for the e-commerce platforms. So now we are all online and everything. So in terms of our e-stores and things like that, how do we encourage corporates to actually share this towards their entire supply chain, for example? So if let's say I've got a manufacturer in terms of getting training, he actually shared the code for preferred rates to the entire supply chain. They say that to conform to their ISO standards, which where we are doing. So that's where they send a referral rates, and that help us in terms of engagement. Then it goes back to email marketing, bring out to a landing page, back to social media. So it's a whole ecosystem of engagement from that perspective. However, again, very different from Grace. Ours is not really targeting on very much on academic qualification or academic roles. Ours is very much in terms of the programs that we have is more of professional certification, of personal certification. So academic qualification typically comes before professional certification. That's normal. So where Tusu comes from is aside and above and beyond just the engagement from just B2B and selling, all right, for enrollments and all. We also have a strategy, all right, and it's a working strategy we've seen in the ASEAN market. Is we actually find that we are able to integrate curriculums into academic curriculums. So, for example, instead of a person earning an academic degree, all right, they gain a foundation of understanding the field of studies and so on. However, through that itself, the implementation portion of specializing, obtaining professional skill sets, all right, can be embedded to complement the academic. So instead of having like a 4 years degree program, all right, and you have to wait throughout the 4 years before you get the final degree program, you're not able to earn like 3 different professional certs face by face. So at least when they come for employability, it will be more on in terms of getting internships, all right? So internships, if let's say they want to work in FANGs and all, they are able to, let's say that I've got this professional cert that meets ISO standards, international standards in this area, all right? So it actually helps learners, undergrads from that perspective. But if you're looking into upscaling of the workforce, all right, upscaling of workforce, they are looking at usually modular trainings, but with professional certifications coming in terms of bundled modular trainings, actually give them more confidence in terms of more holistic approach that employers would be more satisfied in terms of the confidence in terms of delivery of a typical technical skills and competency. So all in all, it's all into one whole ecosystem.
No, that's
So
wonderful.
yeah.
What you're doing in today's world, it's very important to make your employees more employable. And what Topsud is doing across the globe is commendable. And I'm sure there are many businesses like you, as I told in the beginning. In education technologies, there are a lot of similar businesses. So the value proposition which your company has is undoubtedly very, very strong. But I understand you reach out to the corporates and they open your emails and everything, right? Honestly speaking, we are also in a B2B business, and I feel somewhere, I'm sure it depends country to country also, but getting responses back on email, especially for the audience, they can also relate, right? From your end customer is getting difficult day by day. As an individual, I've also stopped checking anything, except my professional email ID, right? So and sometimes it's not easy to get the right email IDs also, specific to my work. You can get my Gmail ID, but you might not be able to end up getting my actual professional email ID, which I'm checking every day. So it's really tough, for those B2B edtech businesses out there. They might be onboarding universities or schools, K-12, you know apart from email, have you tried anything else which really works? Because I'm trying to
Yes.
come on WhatsApp. So especially in India or Indonesia, where I'm based right now, I see WhatsApp has become the new way of communication, right? And forget let it be a B2C or a B2B business. It's very important to reach out to your audience on WhatsApp, correct? And it has become a heart of communication altogether. So, do you think it is a time for B2B businesses to leave everything behind and put more focus on WhatsApp or whatever is the messaging channel in their country? Is it going to be important, and do you think this will succeed in the time to come?
All right, I will come with a very neutral perspective in sense of end of the day, I'm relatively a data focused person. I will base on what the data shares with me in terms of the channel preference, so on and so forth. But moving into WhatsApp, I would say that it gives a more intimate engagement with the audience, direct audience itself. So, for example, what we are doing, what we're selling, and in terms of automation of templates that we is similar to EDM, electronic direct mailer, but contextualized for WhatsApp mass blast and all. It is very useful and impactful if there is a form of the response time. I think that's key. And with automation of response time, to have this the first engagement before a real person intervenes in the communication, that has to be taken into consideration because we do not want to have a case where we do a blast out to like 10,000 WhatsApp contacts. However, my service crew, my team is only able to manage about 100 per day or 200 per day. So that has to be taken consideration of the strategy of engagement. But yes, WhatsApp or even let's say Telegram or Line will be a very good channel in terms of engagement with the either the gatekeeper, decision maker, or sometimes if let's say we're talking about general employee who is not a decision maker, they will be interested. And the next move in terms of B2B, again, we are B2B engagement, not really a B2C, is how can we have them to really connect us with a gatekeeper or a decision maker in terms of coming on in the approach of an organizational training. So that will be a chance of instead of one-to-one selling, I'm now 1-to-1,000 selling. So that itself, WhatsApp will be a very effective tool, or I'll say that this kind of direct communication will be a very effective tool only if you're supported with the response
Exactly.
time. All right. And unlike EDMs where they always give a leeway of that 12 to 24 hours time frame, WhatsApp is I require you to get back to me in the next minute. So that's a difference. All right. So depending on the strategy, the manpower. But I believe with the growing engagement of
Exactly.
ChatGPT, all right, to be integrated into maybe potentially WhatsApp and all, with the kind of engagement with AI ML, it will help to a certain extent. But in terms of having bring the next stage of consideration, the people's engagement is still required for education because end of the day, education is still a service industry. All right, it's not like a tech platform where it's an e-commerce platform. I just purchase, I move on,
No,
the kind
for
of
sure.
things. But it's still a service industry that requires a form of
Yeah, the
interaction.
interaction will always be there, but yeah, role of technology is very important. And with that, we have a technology guy here himself, David from AWS, and I know AWS is quite famous among the education fraternity across the globe. And I must salute the work AWS is doing, round the globe to bring that technology on the table of the institutions across across our world, right? So, David, the kind of work AWS is doing to make sure that, education as an industry is always considered, that we are behind the technology, we are the slow adopter. So, what is the role AWS is going to play, in say in the next 10 years to digitize this whole education, And I also want your feedback on this, Okay, one thing is WhatsApp is getting popular, right? But
Yeah.
okay, okay, if I start using WhatsApp as a channel, that's not going to solve the problem if I don't take the integrated approach and I don't track the communications and and respond back to my audience in the shortest possible time. So what will be the role of technology in this whole scenario, basically, David?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. So to answer your first question in regards to where do we see our role from an AWS perspective, I think there's a couple of different roles that we see ourselves playing. Number one is certainly that technology platform that a lot of our institutions are then building out their student systems and services that are servicing their educators and students. Number two, we are also then, of course, a very popular platform for our wonderful community of EdTech. So organisations like yourselves, Baidu, Duolingo, the list goes on, right, in terms of EdTechs that have been built out on AWS, and that can then be, of course, integrated into that wider technology stack for our customers. And then I think, last but not least, it's the role that we actually have in terms of supporting that ecosystem. So, through programs actually like the t-shirt I'm wearing today, EdStart, where it's essentially a EdTech accelerator, which then helps that community. But also then our role in terms of actually helping educate our educators around, digital technology moving forward. And then actually we have quite a few programs as well where we work with schools and universities in terms of helping with the educational programs to ensure that today's students are trained up for the workforce, the digital workforce of tomorrow.
Got it. So you also work with a lot of universities, right? And I see a lot of people from universities are there in today's audience, right? So for them specifically, let's try to cover the higher education segment first. What are some of the gaps you have seen? Because you have worked in Singapore, you have worked in a lot of countries. So what is your learning experience, David? Where the higher education industry is lacking in terms of technology, and what are some of the technologies they should start using to deliver their courses to reach the wider audience? We are seeing a lot of universities are going into the lifelong learning now, right? So they have realized that these edtech companies like Education and other players are growing so faster. So for these traditional universities, how can they cope up using the technology in terms of delivering their courses to reach the wider audiences, and where they stand right now? What is your observation?
Yeah, thanks. So Abhishek, I think you touched on one of the key trends there, right, around that kind of lifelong learner, right? That now we're seeing that it's not enough for our higher education institutions to simply educate our students and give them a certificate and graduate them and away they go, right? Like governments and industry is demanding that the students are really ready for the workforce, and touched on sort of part of that is some of those digital skills, right? But it's wider than that. It's around that whole lifelong learning. So institutions have got, and they see now it's a responsibility but also an opportunity to ensure that the education takes place within the university or the poly's walls, but then can extend a lot longer as well, right? And I think what's key there from a technology perspective is having that 360-degree view of your students, and the opportunity. And I think touching on your original question, sometimes where the gap is from a technology perspective is the data that is required to have that 360 view of our students. They're in disparate silos across institutions. So, that's one of the gaps, and it's one of the opportunities as well. It's how do we then look to integrate, bring this data together, and then be able to provide insights out of that data, to take advantage of it. And I think, it's very applicable from an omni-channel marketing perspective as well, right? Because you need to have that, that data, and you need to have that view, right? As like Grace was saying, right? She's been able to work out that, yeah, the students don't open emails, but you know what? Like, actually, they're on the same messaging, chat apps that that parents are, etc. So, it's that data, being able to bring that data together and get the really insightful, get the insights out of it.
Exactly. So basically, at the end of the day, let it be a university or a edtech company like Education, the crux is to understand the behavior of your audience, to have the journey data of your audience and use that data, to basically communicate what you are delivering, what you are selling to your audience, right? I think this is something which is common between any kind of education businesses out there. Let it be a university, edtech, or certifications or training programs. A business who will fail to understand their audience and deliver through the omni channel is not going to be successful, unfortunately, because there is so much of competition, and the need of hyper personalization is extremely high right now. As a consumer, if somebody is not able to reach out to me in the real time, or when I'm looking for something, I think we just move on to something else, right? And we don't value that thing, because we feel that they don't care about us, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
this
And I think
this
that
audience.
personalization.
Yeah, please go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry, Abhishek. I was going to say, I think that like that personalization is huge now across education, right? And it's a big trend, not only in terms of kind of the omni-channel marketing approach, but in terms of how now educators are looking at serving educational content, right? So, ensuring that the content is personalized, for the right student at the right time with the right methodology. Etc. And the expectations have changed over the last couple of years, right? We are now all very much used to Netflix and Spotify serving up personalized choices for us, and as consumers in the education space, students are expecting the same, right? And that starts at recruitment and it starts at enrollment, right? Because first impressions count. So if you don't get that personalization right, right up at that recruitment and the enrollment stage, then you're facing an uphill battle from there on in.
So is AWS doing something? I'm especially talking about the higher education universities and colleges, because these edtechs are still very advanced in technology adoption. But is AWS doing something specifically for the universities across the globe to give them an edge? Or what kind of technology support you are planning to? Because I want to come to the very specific point. What is the AWS plan, and what is your pledging to the education industry, and to help them understand their audience and use the omni channel? Because as of now, everybody is using some channels, right? And we call it a scattered multi-channel approach, right? But the thing is, your audience is omnipresent, so you have to be omnipresent, otherwise you cannot succeed, right? So what is AWS role in this whole scenario?
Yeah. So there's a couple aspects to that. I think, the first one is around that personalization side. So we have a lot of technologies, which I broadly, put into two categories that help around that personalization side. So we have a range of artificial intelligence machine learning services, such as Amazon Personalize, which does exactly that. It looks at past transactions or experiences, and then is able to automatically put through personalized recommendations. So that can be used.
Amazing.
It can be used in a retail perspective. It's used in an education perspective as well.
Do you have some discounts for our audience today? So So I think
Nice one,
this is
Abhishek.
what,
I like it.
yeah,
Today.
this is what I
That
want
one
to
got a
hear
lot of
from.
likes. I see that we're getting a lot of thumbs up for that one.
Yeah, because audience today, they understand there's a need of omni-channel marketing and
Yeah,
everything, but they look up to the large companies like AWS, and for that reason Lead Squad was also born, by the way. We also work extensively with a lot of edtech and e-learning companies,
yeah,
and especially the universities, and I
correct.
personally worked a lot in this segment over the last decade, and I
Yeah,
feel universities, this is like a relationship in you see a lot of traditional banks, and then there are fintechs of the world, right? So it's a very difficult kind of situation for the banks to compete with the fintechs, but you guys are doing so much for the banks to compete with the fintechs of the new world. Similarly, today there is a need for the universities to cope up with the ever growing edtech, because edtech has a huge presence. They can reach out to anybody in a shortest possible time. So, I think it's very important that AWS plays that role and help out the audience in universities. Can you share some of your experience? Because I went through your profile, I see you have done some amazing work for some of the universities. Do you have some data for the audience, where you can tell that, because of AWS, so and so technology practices, the university was able to get benefit so and so, over this period of time? That will really boost confidence of the audience, to start looking at some of the technology platforms out there. Yeah.
yeah. Thanks, Abhishek. I think if I think of like a lot of the benefits from cloud, right? Like a lot of it is around that ability to scale. So whether it's universities or edtechs to be able to scale quickly and reliably with with their technology. And I think actually, whilst they're not an end institution, the first one that comes to mind there, right, in terms of scale, is like Baiju. So 15 million plus students, and we've worked with Baiju from the early days in terms of their tech platform and helping them grow to be able to support that amount of students. And why that kind of comes as a case study is they of course use Lead Squared as well, right? So that I think is a good example just in terms of scale. I think on that one though as well, like just as important as scale is the ability to integrate, and that's one of the other great benefits of cloud that especially with AWS, it's there's all open APIs in terms of being able to connect to different services and connect to other edtech platforms like yourself, right? So it makes it very easy then for Baiju to do that connectivity in with say yourselves, and then to take all of that data from say your platform, other platforms,
Understood.
and use that to innovate and build better products and platforms for students. If we're looking at end institutions, probably the one that comes to mind would be Malaysia's Department of Police and the Community College Education. They run their online services on a cloud-based LMS. They moved away from an on-prem or essentially, LMS-based system just for reliability purposes. They've been able to solve an issue they had where they were getting like up to 3% outage time, per month, right? And they've been able to solve that by moving to AWS. And then
Amazing.
again, right, cloud-based, they can then look at integrating into other services to expand the learning opportunities that they're taking out to students.
Amazing. No, that's really nice. I think that will help audience to understand, how technology can really help them. I think on that note, I also want to involve our audience in this discussion. There are some questions, interesting questions out there. I want you guys to, answer them straight away. Maybe, we'll start with Ayushi Jaiswal question. She was the first one to ask the question in the beginning of the session. Ayushi, if you're still there, we'll read out your question. So Ayushi is asking, what is your strategy for engagement when users start still discovering your product? Very nice. So I think, I can sense the pain coming out of this question. It's a very genuine question. So I will ask this to Grace. Because Grace, you are a founder yourself, and so I'm repeating the question again. What is your strategy for engagement to you, of course, to engage your users when they are still discovering your product? How do you engage the early audience, maybe, who are still learning about your product? How do you reach out to them, and how do you make sure that they buy from you and they don't go to some other product company, basically? Yeah.
Okay. Well, first, like, allow me to just correct it. I'm the CEO of Education, not founder. So the founder is
Oh,
Henry, and I know most of you have heard about him also. But how do we actually really make sure that their engagement, even if like the audience is not too familiar with the product? A free trial is something that we have been using, so that they get to have an experience. And for us Asians, anything free that rings a bell immediately, and we would want to take advantage of that. So that is one of the items that we have been doing. But we are also testing something. Apart from doing a free trial, because we know a free trial is going to be high cost in acquisition. So we're looking at other effective tools on how we could be engaging an audience who's not yet too familiar with our product or service. One item that we are leveraging on is testimonials. So having satisfied parents and students talk about our product is actually conveying a more authentic way of having our products promoted. So that's one of the key items that we are also leveraging on. It's more human in approach because it's not like a celebrity talking or endorsing our product, but a real life client who's going to be same as our target audience, right? So we're leveraging on that to really promote awareness and engagement for an audience who's not yet too familiar with our tutorial product.
understood. That's interesting. I hope that gives some idea to Ayushi, about. Okay, great. So we have another one. Royce. Royce will take your question. Kartika, you can mark it. Yeah. So Royce is asking, how do we ensure compliance with local and international data privacy in the use of the omni channels for our target market and prospects? So, how do we make sure that while, we are trying to engage our audience through omni channels, we don't cross the line, right? And how do we make sure that we are following all the compliances locally and internationally? So, David, you want to answer that? Like, what is your experience in this? Have you encountered such situations where, customers come back to you and say that, hey, David, you asked me to do this, we use this platform, but, look, this is something which is not ethical or something like that, right? Yeah, yeah.
So I think there's a couple of different layers to that question, right? And in terms of how you need to address whether you're being compliant. So you need to look at, like, specifically how you're doing that marketing. So there are quite often, and it depends, right? A lot, like, we're talking to an APAC audience here. So different countries have got different rules in regards to how that data can be used, right? So you need to be very aware of how you're using that data and whether that's compliant in terms of how you're going to market. You then need to also then look at what are those practices around the data, and more from an application space. And then last but not least is more in terms of, like, where that data is residing and how are you keeping that data private, and are there rules around if that data can move or not, etc. So from an AWS perspective, we have a site or a tool set of resources called AWS Artifact, where from an infrastructure perspective, if you're then storing that data with, say, us, exactly where that data is going to be kept, and we then will, on a consistent basis, we put and publish all of the different compliance standards that we are matching ourselves to. So you can then very confidently go, okay, great. From meeting this compliance standard, I know that I'm safe because I've got the artifact here from AWS. But you do need to look at those other layers as well. And I think, the complexity, right, kind of goes back to one of the core messages here, that I think you need some sophistication, especially if you're doing APJ-wide marketing. You need some sophistication in that tool where you can build those nuances in, because the last thing you want to be doing is having to do all of that manually. So every time you send out a campaign, you're like, okay, where is this person? Gee, what standards do I need to comply with? You want to bring automation into that process so as you can just execute with confidence and agility.
Right.
All right, I just want to add on a little bit more from Tusu's point of view. In terms of international standards, because different countries have their own regulations, be it GDPR or in Singapore's context is PDPA, but there is an ISO standard, all right, ISO 27001 standards in terms of Data Protection Act. So in terms of how do we comply in terms of ensuring that platforms that we utilize, regardless of any platforms we use, that we comply in terms of the practices. So maybe different platforms in different countries, but it all complies in terms of international standards of ISO 27001. And this is an area that a lot of our clients, all right, in terms of Intusu itself, they come and get trained in the area of data compliance for international standards, especially when they are reaching out to a wider market. For example, I'm providing a service online, however, my market is in the region. And we cannot be like complying to like different countries' requirement, but ISO standards will be the base benchmark and also the threshold in terms of how it should be managed.
Understood.
I think that is something that people can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Branson, for that add-on. For our audience, I also want to quickly touch upon, Instagram marketing and LinkedIn marketing, because we have been talking about the omni-channel here today, but so far we did not. WhatsApp we covered, right? Email we covered for the audience. But so Branson, you talk about in the next 2 minutes about the LinkedIn marketing, because you come from the B2B side of the business, right? Then we'll go to Grace, and Grace, you please prepare for Instagram, because I want you guys to share your perspective on Instagram and LinkedIn marketing for our audience. So Branson, why don't you tell our audience how LinkedIn can play a very important role? Because honestly speaking, for me, LinkedIn has become a new Facebook. So 5 years ago, I used to scroll on Facebook when I was free, but now when I'm free, I'm just scrolling my LinkedIn, doing hundreds of things, posting, checking out different things and everything, right? So Branson, I know a lot of audience, is on LinkedIn right now. What are some of the few hacks and strategies which you want to tell the audience today to leverage the LinkedIn? Yeah.
All right. In terms of LinkedIn engagement itself, it's not all about just what we post. Because yes, I agree with you that LinkedIn is actually the new Facebook, especially when it comes to professional engagement of trying to understand what's happening around in terms of the industry practice, sectorial practice, or within your own environment of practice. So in terms of that itself, LinkedIn has always is similar to the marketing's the basic of marketing, which is the 7 touch point. You always want to have the multiple touch point in terms of the engagement. So it's no different in terms of utilizing the other social media channels and LinkedIn. It's just that LinkedIn will be more specific to professionals. But that said itself, what we have noticed is if you notice also like LinkedIn is usually for people who are finding jobs, not so much about marketing. All right. So when people want to find jobs, they go and they apply on LinkedIn itself. But that is where you want to capture the audience. All right. The audience of people who are looking for jobs, the kind of jobs that's available in the market. All right. And what kind of skill sets required. So if you do in terms of engagement utilizing the LinkedIn platform itself, before the marketing part of things,
just to stop you, sorry, you can run an ad there, of your company too. So before you look for a job, get upskill yourself.
Yes, correct. So you can run an ad and all, but from a B2B standpoint, in terms of market research, market sensing, understanding the entire platform itself, especially when I think majority of our audience here are like on the more they do not subscribe to LinkedIn's professional services. So in terms of that, there's a freemium area where you can even utilize in terms of that. So looking in terms of the jobs that's required in the market, and you can filter in terms of the different levels, the entry level, the mid level, and things like that. That is your target in terms of knowing what kind of intent. Just like I shared, EDMs, right? We have the intent, the different intents. Similar LinkedIn, the intents are always very important based on the market segment and demographic. So if you notice to suit side, when we post engagement, it's very generic. The idea is to be generic, but once they are locked into the area of that generic, of just trying to understand what is this about, just awareness stage itself, then we will start to drill down in terms of which segment they are in and what are the intentions. So from there itself, it will bring back again in the whole omni-channel flow again. So I will not say that LinkedIn itself is one platform that I'll be utilizing in terms of a strategy that saying that 70% is purely on the engagement. But again, it's the omni-channel strategy that is required.
No, I understand. It's very important to be precise on LinkedIn. It's very expensive also, right? So isn't it? So you can't just play around on LinkedIn, but it's very important to lay down some good marketing strategies for LinkedIn. But before we go to Grace, we have a question from Soumya. She's also looks like from a B2B side of the business, and I want to take Branson your feedback, quick feedback on this. What do you think? What is your opinion on using Instagram for B2B marketing? Right? I personally feel, that as I was telling half an hour before, email is going to be obsolete. Okay, so I think let it be B2B or B2C, Instagram, WhatsApp are going to play a very important role for B2B businesses as well, because at the end of the day, even in B2B, there is some C over there who is a user who is going to be on all these platforms, right? So, Branson, what is your take on Instagram marketing as a B2B business?
All right. I've tried, I've tested. Effectiveness wise, it's just lukewarm. I will not say it's very effective, but based on my learning, my understanding of how it was practiced, is Instagram will be the gateway to the people who may utilize the service for their own businesses. Because at the end of the day, Instagram is based on their own interest of what they are looking at. All right. There isn't any intent to what they are searching for. It's all about interest based. So if let's say they're interested in a certain topic that revolves around their work, all right, in terms of, for example, IG stories, IG reels and everything, in terms of like how to utilize Microsoft Excel, that kind of things. And with that typical form of interest stirs up to maybe a platform or services that you're relating towards Excel itself. So that itself will lead on to a B2B. So it will be more of an engagement of the person leading up to they could be a gatekeeper towards their own company. So that itself is more of influencing a decision or influencing awareness of the existence of a product. But again, you are not able to product sell on IG itself or what. So it's really a lot about soft selling there, about awareness. End of the day, it's about interest of how you will help them, how to impact their lives, be it in work or personal. And also the importance is brand positioning, the brand values. All right. I mean, in terms of LinkedIn, you don't see people sharing about their brand values or brand positioning of the organization. But on IG itself is the softer touch. So if you take an example that Fangs Corporation Center and all, they do share about a lot on the engagement. Instead of selling the product, I'm selling you that dream.
Understand.
All right, selling you that dream that potentially you are able to reach out a certain area, you'll be potentially be promoted, for example. If you utilize this, but people go in time, it's like how this platform helps businesses. So it's more influencing.
Grace, I'm sure you have a different point of view because you come from the different side of the business, and I'm sure for you, Instagram will be very big, right? Because it's a B2C audience, students are there across the globe on Instagram, right? So what are your feedback? So tell me, okay, for all the B2C audience here coming from the education businesses, Grace, you tell us which is the best channel for the B2C business marketing.
Okay, it's funny because while Branson was explaining his point of view, I was in parallel typing my response to the same question. So I will pause now the typing and just answer it live right now. So what has been our learning when it comes to using Instagram? It's sensitive to a certain message. So when earlier, what we were doing, whatever is the messaging and material that we use on Facebook, we basically just resize it so that we could use it on Instagram, but exactly the same message and creative material. But what we found out is that how come the effectiveness of Facebook versus Instagram was better? What we've learned specifically to our target audience, especially to the Filipino Gen Z, the appreciation of Instagram is if the message is more lifestyle driven. So, how could it be in the education sector? For example, we are promoting a school. On Facebook, we will be very specific on the functional benefits and functional promise of a school. It would be effective on Facebook. Exactly the same school, when implemented on Instagram, it becomes effective if we talk about what's going to be your life like as a student if you go into the school. And then we show photos of like, this is how the sports facility looks like and the bleachers. Then suddenly, the engagement is better. So anything that's going to be lifestyle driven type of messaging, even if it's exactly the same product or service, it will be effective if it's Instagram versus all other social accounts. So what I'm sharing is that earlier we said it's different message if you're talking about your audience, right? And then when you consider omni-channel, there's another layer there on what's the effectiveness of using each channel. You further filter now your message and your audience so that it would be far more customized and effective.
Correct, correct. And to measure the effectiveness of the channels, audience, you need the technology, you need the platforms, you need to have the omni-channel MarTech or CRM solutions, where you can capture all your audience customer journeys. And at the end of the day, you can take some decisions that look, I was doing omni-channel, I was doing Facebook, Instagram, everything, WhatsApp, and this is the result, right? It's not only about executing the omni-channel strategy, but it's also about the measurement at the end of the day. Because if you don't know what worked for you, what did not work out for you, you cannot take the next best decisions for your business. There is a question also in the chat box by Rox. What are the omni-channel MarTech platforms available in market today to get started for free? Okay, I will take this question. Okay, you should try Lead Squared. So, but you are also saying that to get started for free, no problem, I will give you free also. So, there are, of course, many options in the market, but definitely, at the end of the day, channels will only work out for you, as I told you, if you have a back-end technology provider attached to it who is measuring all the channel execution and performance for you, right? I think on that note, I also want to hear from David. David, what do you think? Some final conclusions from your side. You take this another interesting question, David. I have one for you. I Somebody was asking, is there any upcoming marketing channel which will become famous in the future, where we should plan our campaign? That's a lot of foresightedness by the question. I think by Soumya.
If I knew
So.
that, I think I'd be going out and buying shares in them.
Yeah, amazing, but wonderful question. I think marketers are very excited, and they are very looking forward to market further more to the new channels which are coming up. So I think nobody knows the answer, but there's nothing which is getting famous beyond WhatsApp and Instagram. I see across the globe. I think right now WhatsApp and Instagram are leveraging their power, and they will continue to do so for the next half a decade at least. I feel so. But there are a lot of more budding channels. Of course, there is YouTube, but it's not a new channel, right? But there's a YouTube also, which we did not touch upon today. For a lot of businesses out here today in the audience, YouTube will be another channel, right? So there are many channels we can talk about. But as I told all of you guys, your customers are omnipresent, so you have to be on the all the on the omni channels, right? There's no other way if you really want to exponentially grow your business. And at the end of the day, the technology behind your omni channel is going to be very, very important, right? So I think on that note, have we covered all the questions, Kartika?
Unfortunately, there are more questions, but of course, we are short on time. So I have put in a message to the audience as well. So if
Yeah.
you'd like to connect with us over LinkedIn or if you want to email
Please,
to us,
please, please.
definitely do that. We will get back to
There
you
is
for
there
sure.
is someone talking about TikTok also.
Yes.
I would love to personally connect with you, Soumya. TikTok is also something which is very, very important. However, it is banned in India, back in India, but in Southeast Asia, it's very big actually. And it is generating some very good branding and business for the companies, right? Awesome. I think any final words, Grace, David, Branson, for our audience?
Well,
I think it's new year, new start. So all the best to everyone in terms of having omni-channel strategies. And I believe Slit Square as one of the leading providers in the market. I think they are one of the best people if you can actually speak to them in terms of where your solutions are required.
Yes, of course. Thank you,
Awesome.
Branson. David, great.
Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I
Grace.
was
Grace,
gonna,
yeah, David, you are going. Yeah,
I
please.
was just going to say, I think one of the key messages, right, has been like how many different channels and approaches and nuances there are, right? So I think that personalization is key. So yeah, I'd really recommend people focusing on that. And I think the other one that we probably haven't touched on so much is just around that enrollment process as well, right? When you actually have reached and found your target students and target audience, that enrollment process, right, is critical. Getting the right students in while they're still, warm, hot leads, automating that
Yes,
process, I think is also very important as well, because that's when, competition is hottest, when a student is about to make that decision, is your competitors are going to be thinking the same thing as well. So the more you can do at that stage, the better.
that's right. And Grace, any final thoughts?
Yeah, like especially for the creative people here who enjoys marketing campaigns and marketing programs, definitely omni-channel marketing is the sexy work of the entire funnel that we're doing. So definitely important that we do that. But equally important is not to lose sight of those who are already responding to all our marketing messages. And that's why like having lead squared into that management of things, very important so that return on all the marketing initiatives that we're doing, we're able to immediately capture. So do the marketing part, but the selling part is equally important because that's the true result of
Yes,
what we're doing in marketing. Let's make sure that there's equal attention given to that. And don't ever lose that potential client who has already been responding to those marketing campaigns.
exactly. Very, very well said. At the end of the day, it's the sales which you make from the marketing efforts. Awesome. I think thank you so much to our lovely audience. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Kartika, for arranging this. And yeah, great talking to all of you guys, Grace, David, and Branson. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Thanks to the speakers as well. All right, we'll have more sessions coming up, and hopefully, we can see our speakers again one more time in some session. So, keep an eye out for all that. And yes, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks
Thank you.
all.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.
All right, see you. Bye bye.